Lebanon's Health Minister and Prime Minister Hassan Diab will soon announce the resignation of the government. In Trinidad and Tobago, elections to appoint a new government are being held. In the U.S., a woman has been killed and at least 2 people are in critical condition as a result of an explosion. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmero. According to Lebanon's Health Minister Hamad Hassan, the Lebanese Prime Minister Hassan Diab will soon announce the resignation of the government, several days after a massive explosion devastated the port of Beirut. Diab is scheduled to address the nation at 7:30 p.m. local time. Several ministers have already announced their resignation. Last weekend, there were massive protests in Beirut over the mishandling of explosive materials. Protesters assaulted several ministries, threw stones and blocked a street near Parliament. Police used tear gas to disperse the protesters. The recent explosions in Lebanon's capital that resulted in over 150 deaths has erupted in a new wave of protests near the parliament in Beirut. During the second day of anti-government protests, demonstrators clashed again with Lebanese police as they tried to break into the parliament headquarters. On Sunday, Lebanon's political elite faces pressure from all sides as citizens demand an end to the corruption, bad governance and mismanagement. The Environment Minister Damianos Qatar and Information Minister Manal Abdel Samad both announced their resignation following the disaster that has revived anger at the ruling class seen as living in luxury, while millions endure job losses, deepening poverty, power blackouts, and garbage mountains piling up in the streets. Syrian lawmakers, some clad in masks due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, attended the first meeting of the new parliament following the July 2020 legislative elections. The vote was the third to take place in Syria since the conflict began in March 2011. This year's election followed a new wave of U.S. sanctions that came into effect last month. The poll was held during Syria's worst economic crisis and currency crash that has dragged most of the country's population into poverty. Around 1,600 candidates ran this year for the 250-seat People's Assembly. An improvised bomb planted on a motorbike killed 6 people in Pakistan's southwestern province of Balochistan on Monday, according to police reports. A vehicle carrying personnel from the country's anti-narcotic force was believed to be the target of the blast in the Shamang town, close to the border with Afghanistan. No group immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, but Baloch separatists demanding greater autonomy have been waging an insurgency for years, while the province is also impacted by sectarian strife and Islamic violence. Mineral-rich Balochistan, bordering Afghanistan and Iran, is the largest of Pakistan's 4 provinces. Pupils in their final year of primary, secondary and tertiary education resume classes in the Democratic Republic of the Congo after the end of the state of emergency. The African nation has seen a decrease in the number of daily infections. Today, the country has reported nearly 9,500 COVID-19 cases. The Democratic Republic of Congo has reported 224 deaths due to the novel coronavirus. President Felix Tshisekedi visited some schools in Kinshasa to celebrate the occasion. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko won re-election with 80% of the votes at the country's presidential election. The Central Election Commission affirmed that Stavlena Tikhanovsky, a former English teacher who emerged as Lukashenko's main rival at the elections on Sunday, won 9.9% of the votes. The whole election day was marked by clashes between protesters and the police. Reports say the most means had been shut down by law enforcement officials in an effort to avoid demonstrations. In Belarus, the leader of the opposition, Svetlana Tikhanovsky, called for mobilizations to reject the preliminary results of the presidential elections announced on Sunday. Mobilizations were held in cities such as Minsk, Brest and Vitebsk after the preliminary results were widely led by the current president Alexander Lukashenko. Protests degenerated into violent confrontations that left several people injured. However, police forces dispersed the demonstrators and several were arrested. The events occurred amidst allegations by the government of Belarus of Western interference in coordination with opposition factors for destabilizing actions of the government of Lukashenko. And we'll go now to a short break. Follow us on social media and don't go away.
Telesur English presents a weekly program to discuss the political, economic and social issues affecting the Caribbean community. We'll challenge stereotypes and unpack the diversity of the region through the analysis of unique cultures, religions and art. We Caribbean. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. There are 146 candidates from 19 political parties and 4 independent candidates contesting today's election in Trinidad and Tobago. More than 1.1 million people will go to the polls to choose between the candidates. Voters' turnout is usually low and this year may not be different, especially because of COVID-19 and a recent spike in cases. Polls open at 6 a.m. and are expected to close at 6 p.m. The elected candidates will occupy the 41 seats in Parliament. The leader of the winning party will become the Prime Minister of the Caribbean nation. The ruling People's National Movement and the opposition United National Congress have the greatest chance of winning.
Election 2020. On July 17th, candidates representing the various political parties presented nomination papers to return.
And following bilateral talks on Sunday, President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Mohamed Irfan Ali, and President of Suriname, Chandrika Persad Santokhi, pledged their commitment to improve the relations between the two states. During a media briefing, President Santokhi indicated that the conversation between the two heads of state was extensive, covering multiple sectors, and was aimed at strengthening the existing relationship Guyana and Suriname share. The talks also focus on opening up emerging sectors and infrastructure links that can create opportunities for human resources in both countries.
I don't know if you can recall that when I was Minister of Justice and Police, I signed an agreement with Minister of Home Affairs, Minister O'Hay, and that is a comprehensive...
After the media briefing, Suriname's President Santokhi reaffirmed the importance of cooperation between both countries.
Where, with the mandate of both people of the nation, we have to accomplish our mandate on a very comprehensive way, but also with the same confidence what the people gave us to accomplish their objectives through the democracy and to achieve a lot of activities, to have a better communication, to better cooperation, and also good understanding between those two nations.
Also, the President of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, highlighted the importance of bilateral cooperation.
The private sector of both countries will collaborate and be a part of this transformational landscape that can bring tremendous benefit to our countries. We have also settled collaboration among ministries, particularly in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, but more importantly, in working out a strategic vision that is implementable, that is time-bound, and we have both stressed the need to have time-bound objectives.
Roadblocks and protests have intensified in Bolivia after the lack of answers on a definitive date for the presidential elections and in demand for the resignation of the de facto president Janine Áñez. Close to a week of protests, roadblocks and mobilizations organized by civil organizations in several regions of the country keep uninterrupted, specifically in La Paz, Cochabamba and Santa Cruz. Meanwhile, the Bolivian Central Workers and Farmer movements assured that the road blockades will be maintained on 100 routes in the Andean region, despite the pressure of irregular groups against the population. At least 60 protesters were arrested and 40 still remain in detention. Farmers and miners convened a march to be held this Monday in retaliation to the government's decision to extend the presidential elections. In an exclusive interview for Telesur, the militant and political analyst Daniel Solís affirmed that the government faces with double intent the road blockades.
The same mobilized bases throughout Bolivia are demanding for the leadership both the Unity Pact and the Bolivian Workers' Center, who have called for this mobilization that must not betray the demand of the people. As I told them earlier, all blocking points in their generality are already calling for the resignation of the de facto president, Janine Áñez. No longer elections, no longer trusting that the elections will guarantee change or the democratic transition that Bolivia is wanting. The government acts with two faces, with one hand offering dialogue and with the other hand you repressing fascist groups. You are representing what the complicity of the police to the points of blockade.
The Peruvian Minister of Interior, Jorge Montoya, said that at least 3 natives of Cucuma people were killed and 17 others injured in the Loreto region during a confrontation with Canadian oil company Petrotal. The clash between indigenous people and agents occurred on Sunday outside the facilities of Petrotal. Around 17 villagers arrived at the location demanding the halt of production of the so-called Block 95. The local organization of indigenous communities, Orpio, stated that they demand 5% of the oil production taxes for the closing of gaps in the Puanua Basin, as well as Petrotal says repatriation for 50 years of environmental damage. Orpio also demands a greater care from Martin Vizcarra's government amidst COVID-19 pandemic. Petrotal reported that after the events, it stopped operation at its oil production field located in the Loreto region in the northeast of the country.
Para denunciar la represión del Estado.
To denounce the state repression through the national police of the Cuncamas borders of the Puinahua Basin, exactly in Block 95, managed by Petrotal. The indigenous brothers, with the will to talk, went to speak with the leaders of the oil company with the aim of gaining access to the territorial control. Territorial control is a measure of force with the purpose of demanding that the state and the company close the breaches of poverty that exist in the area.
In Brazil, COVID-19 cases continue to increase as the Latin American nation registers more than 101,000 deaths. The Latin American nation is the second most affected country by the new coronavirus pandemic in the world. Today, the nation has confirmed more than 3 million COVID-19 cases. The alarming numbers put into evidence the deteriorated health system in the region. Latin America and the Caribbean has registered nearly 220,000 deaths and over 5.5 million COVID-19 cases, making it the worst affected region in the world. In Colombia, more than 10,000 new COVID-19 cases were reported in the last 24 hours, setting a new record for daily infection. According to the nation's health ministry, nearly 390,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19. The country reports nearly 13,000 deaths. The nation's capital, Bogota, continues to be the most affected, followed by the departments of Antioquia, Córdoba, and Valle de la Cauca. Health authorities also confirmed the recovery of over 212,000 patients. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, a woman has been killed and at least 2 people are in critical condition as a result of an explosion on Monday. The disaster occurred in a residential area of Baltimore City. According to local media, it was a gas explosion that caused at least 3 homes to collapse and several others to be damaged. Rescue workers are working on site trying to locate other possible victims. We will keep updating the information in following broadcasts as the situation unfolds. Was again declared by authorities Sunday night in Portland when protesters marched to a police union building, blocked the road and set dumpsters fires as officers worked to quell nightly unrest in Oregon's largest city. Demonstrators Sunday night marched to the building from a park a few blocks away. The road was blocked with fencing and flames were seen rising from dumpsters in the middle of the street. Since George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis, protests have occurred nightly in the city for more than 70 days. The Chinese government sanctioned 11 U.S. officials, including Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, in retaliation for similar U.S. moves against Chinese officials.
In response to the wrongdoings of the U.S. side, China has decided to impose sanctions on some people that behaved badly on Hong Kong-related issues, starting immediately. U.S. Senators Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton, Pat Toomey, and U.S. Representative Chris Smith. The President of the National Endowment for Democracy, Carl Hersman, President of the National Democratic Institute, Derek Mitchell, President of the International Republican Institute, Daniel Twining, Executive Director of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, and President of Freedom House, Michael Abramowitz.
In the United States, COVID-19 infections continue to increase as the northern nation reports nearly 5.2 million cases. The North American country is by far the worst affected country by the pandemic, with the highest death rate of more than 165,000, only ahead of Brazil, which surpassed 101,000 deaths. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump was accused of flouting the Constitution by unilaterally extending a virus relief package. Students in the Berlin, Bradensburg, and Schleswig-Holstein regions returned to the classroom after months away due to the coronavirus crisis. Plexiglass windows for teachers, compulsory masks in the corridors, and disinfectants in the music and sports halls are just some of the measures welcoming students and staff back to school. According to Johns Hopkins University, Germany reports a total of 10,120 active cases.
When we play together during the break in the courtyard, we don't have to wear a mask. It bothers me to wear it because it makes it harder to understand me, and yes, it's quite annoying.
We have plexiglass windows which protect from spill in every classroom so that the teachers, specifically those from at-risk groups, are a little better protected, or at least feel that they are. We have means of disinfection for musical instruments, for sports classes. We try as much as possible not to mix the groups, and in this way we hope to start this new school year as well as possible.
Sun seekers flocked to beaches over the weekend as parts of Western Europe sweltered in a heat wave. A day after Britain recorded its hottest August day in 17 years at 37.4 Celsius, much of its southern coastline was packed with visitors, many of whom have been forced to abandon more than exciting foreign holidays because of COVID-19 travel restrictions. There was a similar story across other parts of Europe, where many residents endured weeks of of lockdown earlier this year. No relief is expected until Wednesday, with the soaring temperatures compounding the pressure as the coronavirus outbreak worsens. Researchers warn that this week the climate change will likely bring more hot weather to Europe. Greek emergency services and residents faced up to severe damage on Monday after flash floods sparked by a storm on the island of Evia left 8 people dead. Those in the village of Burtusi were removing mud and debris from their homes after a nearby river burst into its banks. Parts of Evia saw rainfall that reached 80% of the annual rainfall for the area in the space of a few hours overnight Saturday to Sunday. Greece's meteorological service has said authorities estimated 3,000 residences had been partially or totally damaged by floodwaters, and police said that many local roads are impassable. The death toll was updated to 8 after the body of a man missing after a storm was recovered Monday near the Greek mainland, Greece's Coast Guard said. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Laura Palmero. Thank you for watching.